impact, if any, do you see with the elimination of the specific Grammy Award category, Best Hawaiian Music Album, on the Hoku Awards?
You know, there's so many different varying opinions about, on both sides of the fence, about the validity of that award, about the award itself. I think overall, and the board feels this way as well, even though there's various different sub-levels of opinions, I think overall it's a loss for, of course, our artists here. Not having that category specifically designed for, Hawaiian music. And of course, that in itself is brought to different interpretation, and it has been. That's what part of the controversy has been. But I think that having the category go away or actually be enveloped in the roots category, if I'm not mistaken, is definitely a loss for the industry here. The one thing with the Academy, and maybe it's not as apparent to the voting members or to everybody else, the public, as we get these releases, the more we get, we have like, I guess, an internal ticker, for lack of a better term, that once we get X amount of releases in a category, we discuss the ability to actually separate it. A good example of this was actually doing a separate kihoalo category. Before it was lumped in with instrumentals. So you have ukulele guys, you have the steel guys, you have new age type of guys, the synthesizer stuff, and of course you have our many wonderful kihoalo artists. We would get letters from a lot of the artists that, for example, if they happen to be in a year where Jake, for example, he's got such a huge following worldwide. If Jake was in there, it would be really hard, to compete against that. And besides, I guess the more important thing is that, with instrumental music and with kihoalo being, such an art form here, shouldn't it be a separate category? So as we continue to get more releases that could justify the category, we created the category. We take a year to actually say we'll do it the following year, and then implement it the following year. Of course, like you said, single came back. We had a EP that was actually added this year as well. And that was actually, we had a lot of EPs that came in. We had a lot of people that, because of the economy, because of the way things are, less and less people are recording these days. It's hard, our brick and mortar stores are going down, so everything's going online. So people either want to release online, or maybe they don't have the funds to do an entire album. So putting them in a category that actually has, album of the year or whatnot, maybe it didn't seem right, because it's not fair to the other artists that spent 10, 20 grand and do the CD. But at the same time, we've had enough releases where it justifies creating the category. So we always try to I guess, get a pulse of what's going on in the industry, weigh it out. A lot of people, a lot of arguing back and forth to make sure it's the right decision, and then if it is, we implement it.
I went to a brick and mortar store twice in the last month looking for a new Hawaiian release, and both times they didn't have it.
Yeah.
In one case, they said they didn't even have the artist in their database. And this was a guy who is one of the finalists for Mayor Local of the Year. So how is HARA addressing that?
Well, on one side of things, we can't turn a blind eye to it. First time Napster and MP3 came out, I knew this was going to be, as well as the other tech-oriented board members, knew this was going to be the new format. For me personally, as a recording artist, most of my revenue comes in via digital downloads and MP3s. HARA's reaction was to actually allow MP3 type of entries, because we know that is a viable submission format these days. Now, as far as finding, actual releases in stores, that's one that's coolly on the distributors, the labels themselves, but it's really, really hard, because here you have a store that's thankfully still around that might order 2 of one CD, or 3. They're not carrying the boxes and cases they used to store underneath, like the towers, for example, which I was a big fan of. So they're responding as best as they can from their end, and maybe they're not ordering something unless the person wins a Hoku, or unless the person is a Grammy-nominated, artist or whatnot. So it becomes really difficult to try to tell them what to do, or how to actually order or whatnot. But at the same time, for myself and a lot of other artists, as soon as our CDs come out, whatever stores are left, bring a poster, bring malasadas or something, and your CD, because if they remember that FaceTime, they might remember ordering, more of your products. So.
Well, one other thing that HARA has done to, I think, sort of expand the reach of local musicians has been the festival and the seminars. I know you've had entertainment-related programs, but you also have seminars that teach people how to get their stuff out there?
Yes, actually, what we did was I tried to design one, we're not, versus what we happened last year with 20 simultaneous different workshops. There's only 5 different groups of workshops each day. One is hula-oriented, for those that actually want to study with Sunny Ching, with O'Brien Selu. They have one section of hula which runs all day. There's a separate one which I'm really excited about, which is purely Lola Hawaii, purely Hakumele chant, You have people like Hoku Hanohano, you have people like Moon, different composers, different, prolific people in the industry that know the language that will be doing those types of workshops. Again, it's all day. And even if you're a new composer, or if you're an artist and you have something, that poetry you've been working on, maybe a song you've been working on, you wanted to kind of vet it through them, we have breakout workshops where you can actually do that. So you can bring your compositions and get feedback from these kind of people. We have a music business one, which is for those starting in the industry, how to record, why would I want to record, why would I want to go with a label, why would I want to be self-managed, and then MP3s. Now that's one that question I get a lot from Kupuna at Pali Live or in different places, like how to get my stuff on iTunes. Because the CD sales are stopping. So thankfully I contacted Brian Felsen, the owner of CD Baby, and that was one of the first ways that you could have gotten MP3s on Yahoo Music, iTunes or whatnot. So he's coming down, and so we have that kind of workshop. We also have an instrumentation one where steel guitar, ukulele, guitar 201, bass 201. So you have guys like Nathan Avia, you have different monster musicians that are actually showing people lead techniques, improvisation, as well as those for beginners as well. So it's a good, I guess, mix of workshops, but they all are specifically themed, and they all have a different appeal to different people, and different playing levels, or if you're just a fan of music.
One of the complaints about the Grammys, as long as there was a Hawaiian music category, was that certain people run it, or they own it, or they dominate it. And I've heard the same thing for years from people who say, well, certain people, there's people that the Hoku Awards, certain labels dictate. Or certain people, or the rules are changed to accommodate who puts stuff out. Sure. And I wonder, does it seem that complaints like that are always part of awards programs, that somebody?
Yeah, there will always be a part of award programs. The first one on the Grammy side of things, as I mentioned earlier, it is a loss for our industry here. But what happens is a very typical local mentality, and I can say this because my family's from Waianae. What happens is, something happens like what happens every year, right? Artists then boycott. Say, I'm not going to submit my CD, forget it. Screw those guys. I'm not going to become a voting member. Well, by doing those two things, you're guaranteeing that nothing will ever change. And the result will always be the same. For our industry here, and I think maybe that's changed in the last couple of years or whatnot, as more artists and because the industry is changing overall, as more artists actually market themselves, they're doing the Twitter, they're doing Facebook, they're doing stuff like that. They're actually doing their own kinds of, hitting all the forums online, driving that interest, creating PDF posters or whatnot, contacting Halal, contacting folks like Whittier College, doing all that kind of networking themselves. They're starting to get a lot of play. They're starting to get a lot of crowds and getting a lot of appeal and demand, in those types of markets. And I think, there's definitely people that have complained that certain labels or distributors, are very heavy-handed and they always get, votes. But in the last couple of years, I think that's actually changed a lot. If you look at some of the winners, and a lot of that is also how you carry yourself in your network. Here locally, how often you gig, how are you with people after you gig? Do you thank people for coming to your gig? Do you, whenever, and I know getting radio play is a challenge, but hit up all the neighborhood radio stations. There's a lot of things you can do, and for those that have thought outside of the box and address those things, they're the ones that have seen the return, whether it be being nominated or a Hoku win, or just having a buzz about the people, which is what it's all about.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Thank you.